Hi, I'm Bridget. Welcome to my kitchen where I elevate the everyday with inspiring recipes that are doable for any cook. Today is breakfast day, and I'm sharing my versions of two family favorite recipes for pancakes and waffles. We'll begin with pancakes. This is my childhood recipe for pancakes, and no matter how many other recipes I try, this is the one that I always come back to. The pancakes are fluffy even when I use heavy flour, and the recipe doubles well. Today we're making a single batch, and I'll start by combining the dry ingredients. I'm using 3/4 of a cup of stone ground whole spelt flour. Stone ground flour is my choice because you get all of the flavor and nutrition of the grain. All-purpose flour has all of that sifted out, and that's why it ends up being fortified. In addition to the 3/4 of a cup of stone ground spelt flour, I'm adding 1/2 a cup of all-purpose flour and 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 3 tablespoons of sugar, and 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. I'll whisk those together. Now for the wet ingredients, we'll start by beating an egg. 1 egg, 1 large egg. And to that, I'm going to whisk in 3 tablespoons of oil. And 3/4 of a cup of milk. This is just 1% milk. You can use 2% milk, or you could use buttermilk. You could add a tablespoon of plain yogurt to this milk to give it a little bit of a lift. And then I'm going to whisk in the dry ingredients, and I'll just keep whisking until all of the lumps are gone. Now, as I said, this is just a single batch, a simple single batch. More often than not, when I'm making this recipe, I double it. Leftovers freeze well, and it's always handy to have pancakes in the freezer. They're easy to reheat. You can just microwave them to thaw them. Another trick with pancake batter is to let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes before you start cooking the pancakes. That lets the batter start to activate, gets the baking powder going, so we'll have nice lofty pancakes. While our pancake batter is resting, let's get started on the waffles. We were a pancake family when I was growing up, and real waffles always seemed exotic. One Christmas, my mom bought us all stove-top waffle irons. They were a big hit, and for a while I put away the family pancake recipe and experimented only with waffles. My favorite all-time recipe is from my brother-in-law, Phil. It's a family recipe from his Norwegian grandmother. We'll start by whisking 2 tablespoons of sugar into 1/4 of a cup of melted butter. Make sure the butter isn't still hot, because now we're going to beat in 1 egg. This is a large egg. And when that's combined, I'm adding 1.5 cups of milk. I love this recipe because it's so easy to mix up. There's no separating eggs, no yeast involved. Now for the flour, or for the dry ingredients, I have made a couple of adaptations to this recipe. I use 1/2 whole wheat flour, and this is stone ground whole wheat flour, so that is 3/4 of a cup. And I have 3/4 of a cup of all-purpose flour. Now you could make these 100% whole wheat if you'd like. They would be heavier, but they'd still be extra delicious. 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Now another change that I made to this recipe is adding 2 tablespoons of flax. And we'll add 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. We'll just stir those. The original recipe also called for 1/3 of a cup of melted butter, and I've dropped that back to 1/4 of a cup. And I've reduced the sugar as well, cut that in half. So now we are going to add the wet ingredients to the dry ingredients, and I'm just going to whisk them in. Oh, almost forgot the vanilla, just half a teaspoon of vanilla. So I'm going to whisk those into the dry. And just like the pancake batter, I'm just going to keep whisking until there are no lumps. And now our waffle batter is ready. I have the electric waffle iron preheating. It still needs a few minutes to warm. So let's move over to the stove and start cooking our pancakes. I've warmed the pan over medium heat, and I'm just going to oil it. Now, what I prefer to do is to pour the oil in, but then use a paper napkin to swirl it around. And I'll drop the batter into the pan by 1/3 cupfuls. I mean, you can make jumbo pancakes if you want, but I was accustomed to making lots of little pancakes for my kids, and I never did go back to great big pancakes. Bubbles are starting to form on the top of my pancake, and the edges are starting to firm up, so I'm just going to take a little peek to see if it's ready to flip. We'll let this cook for another minute or 2. All right, this one is ready. I'll prep the pan again. Because this isn't a no-stick pan or a non-stick pan, I will oil it in between every pancake. And while that cooks, let's get going with the waffles. For this waffle iron, the capacity is the better part of a cup. So I'll just spread that between the 2 waffle compartments. And I always set my timer for my waffles. These will take about 5 minutes. If you want to make blueberry pancakes, I always add the blueberries to the top of the pancake as soon as I pour the batter in the pan. If you add the blueberries to the batter, then everything turns blue. If you want breakfast ideas that are hearty and healthy, these 2 recipes can become your go-to breakfast ideas. Both of these recipes can be made using only all-purpose flour, but I hope you'll start to experiment with stone ground flour in your kitchen too. Thanks for watching. Enjoy.